Today's video is brought to you by Assiniboia Downs Gaming and Event Center. And be sure to tune in to Trust the Profits Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Lights, hosted by Matthew DeSantis.
Salutations and welcome, friends. I'm your host of this Belmont Stakes Spotlight Series preview, and we are taking a look at Ben Colebrook's long shot, Reys Kane. That's going to be what we're taking a look at today. But before we dive into this, make sure to press that subscribe button here on YouTube to get all of our great content on Trust the Profits, from live betting. Obviously, we're going to be doing that Monday nights at Assiniboia Downs. That's a blast. You guys got to check that out. If you've not played Assiniboia, man, they're doing it the right way too. Check out their player portal on their website. Free PPs, free HRN information, free charting horse information, and a link to all of our stuff that we're doing for them. So a ton of great content there for Assiniboia. We also have the lounge on Thursday nights that El Hombre is leading up. I think they're going to Woodbine recently, so they're doing a lot of fun. We're just going to Canada for the summer. Now that the weather's a little bit nicer up there, we're just going north. So that's what we got for live betting. But listen, we got a ton of content for you for the Triple Crown. We got guests coming on, greatest stakes previews, Captain the Card, doubling down. So much different content for all of your needs for the Triple Crown, as well as going into the summer, the Haskell, all of the races up at Saratoga, the Pennsylvania Derby, the fall meet at Keeneland, getting ready for the Preakness, or getting ready for the Breeders' Cup, I should say, as well. Going to be doing a lot of international race coverage, also starting with Royal Ascot, but doing a lot more of that throughout the summer and into the fall. So much content here on Trust the Profits. So make sure to press that subscribe button. Additionally, make sure to like this video and comment below with what chances do you give Reys Kane at winning the 2023 Belmont Stakes. Well, let's talk a little bit about Reys Kane, who I think is a very interesting horse. And you see him here winning that Gotham Stakes, which was a bizarre race. And you'll notice the horse to his inside doesn't have a rider on. And that was just one of the many things that was bizarre about that race. But How Great Is Nate is the horse actually on the inside. And good, that ended up all right. How Great Is Nate was perfectly fine. Everybody was okay. And more importantly, How Great Is Nate came back to win a stakes race at Monmouth recently. So, hey, good for the riderless horse. But Reys Kane just romped in that Gotham Stakes that day. But that is a little bit of a fluky race that we're going to talk a little bit more about. But, you know, there's some things to potentially like with Reys Kane, and certainly rooting for Ben Colebrook, a smaller barn in there, and want to take a look at this a little bit more closely. So let's take a look at Reys Kane and talk about his chances in this year's 2023 Belmont Stakes. And let's start up at the top with the pedigree. You got the same pedigree up top that you have with Forte, Violence. All right. So you got a Violence sire. That's part of the reason I like this Reys Kane, Violence and Kane. I like that a little bit. Smart naming. But then you have Damn by Lemon Drop Kid. So some cool breeding, I think. And I'd love to get Jessica Tugwell. She's going to be doing a lot of these pedigree videos on all the Belmont Stakes horses. So I'm interested in hearing her take. I have mine on Reys Kane, but interested in hearing her take. One of the things that I do think is important to point out Violence is this is a sire who does not have a very overwhelming average winning distance of his offspring, of his progeny. The average winning distance of Violence progeny is only 6.6 furlongs. You compare that to most of the other major sires in this race, even some of the younger sires, like a Good Magic, for instance, or, you know, like an Arrogate, or, you know, like some of the other younger sires, even a Gun Runner who's really just got two crops. You take a look at their average winning distance, it's significantly longer. It's, you know, usually 6.9, 7, 7.1, 7.2, you know, a whole half furlong longer on average than what you see from Violence. Additionally, you look at a horse like Arrogate, 7.7 average winning distance from his progeny. That's the horse Archangelo has Arrogate as a sire. So it's something to keep in mind. And it's the case maybe a little bit against Forte. And I don't want to jump the shark and start talking about Forte when we want to devote this to Reys Kane. But I think there are some legitimate questions. I think a lot of people have asked whether or not a Violence progeny can get the distance. That was something that was leading up to the Kentucky Derby. And now we're going an extra 2 furlongs on top of that. We're going 1.5 miles. The test of champions in the Belmont Stakes. Can Reys Kane get that distance? Ben Colebrook, great horseman, based out of Kentucky, but also runs up in New York. And I'm rooting for this horse because this is kind of an interesting horse when you look at this horse's running lines. Goes down, breaks his maiden at Keeneland in second career start, and then kind of immediately goes up in a stakes competition and holds his own, runs okay, finishes third in the Bowman Mill Stakes, comebacks, finishes second in that Gun Runner Stakes at the fairgrounds. So that was quite impressive. But then goes to Turfway Park, runs on the synthetic, finishes fifth. Listen, I think you can cross a line through that. Maybe you just didn't like the synthetic, just didn't like it that day. You saw the speed figures took a little bit of a step back as well. Then goes up to the Gotham in March, and that was a bizarre race. First of all, it's a one-turn mile race. So even though we think of it as a Derby prep, it's not really much of a prep. A one-turn mile is not what I would say is a prep for the Kentucky Derby, but it's a one-turn mile. It was completely miserable conditions. You were in the slop. It was an incredibly fast fractions early on. How great is Nate? Lost his rider and, really kind of got in the way of everybody else to some extent and was on the inside rail and was kind of in front of a lot of horses, I think, who wanted to potentially try to get around him. So it was interesting. It was just a very bizarre race. I don't know how much we can take out of that Gotham Stakes necessarily, but nevertheless, he wins that, comes flying late and wins easily. I mean, just absolutely easily over Slip Mahoney. So, wins that race going away, then comes back in the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes and runs a fifth. And I'll be honest, that was about where I thought he was going to run that day. I actually did show a little bit of a progression from an Equibase speed figure standpoint, but didn't show much. I didn't think in that particular race that made me that confident to the point where I actually thought he was a candidate to potentially finish last, second last, third to last in the Kentucky Derby. Well, what's he go? He goes into the Kentucky Derby and actually runs halfway decent, finishes eighth, right behind Tapit Trice and Dermasotogake. So two horses that took a lot of money and a lot of interest in the general public finished right behind the two of them. And obviously was benefited by that fast pace up front set by those horses up on the front end leaders, but was able to benefit from that and coming charging late. Now, here's the thing. He is a bit more of a closer. And I don't know what sort of pace he's going to get in the Belmont Stakes. That's the issue that I go back to with Reys Kane. Even if you set the pedigree aside, you go, listen, Violence pedigree maybe is overstated. They'll be able to get the distance. Don't worry about it. Forte's a great horse. He'll be able to get the distance. Don't worry about that. Okay, fine. I still think he's pace dependent. And the problem in the Belmont Stakes is you have one horse that is going to be on the lead, and that is National Treasure. And there's nobody else who's going to be pressing National Treasure on the lead. Now, there are going to be horses to stalk National Treasure for sure, but there's not another horse in this Belmont Stakes field who needs or wants the lead. So National Treasure is going to go out. He's going to get to the lead quickly. He's going to slow down, set reasonable fractions, and then turn for home. Reys Kane's not going to have a lot to run into. You're now relying on this horse just being better conditioned and just being a better class of horse than a lot of other horses in this race. I don't necessarily see that happening in this particular setup. He did obviously run well in New York. The one time he ran there in the Gotham, but that was on the aqueduct surface. And again, that was, a very sloppy sealed track that day. So very different conditions potentially from what we might see up there on Belmont Stakes Day. So that's something to certainly keep in mind with him. He clearly does like the slop a little bit. So if it is poor conditions, maybe something to keep in mind. He doesn't mind the kickback. He doesn't mind doing that. It should be pointed out he was also breaking from post position 12 that day at the Gotham. So he was able to stay a little further on the outside away from some of that kickback. Again, if it's muddy conditions, if it's, if there's rain, obviously I have to play that by ear and just see kind of what the forecast ends up holding. We don't want to project too far out, but that's something to keep an eye on. But listen, Reys Kane, he's a nice story. I root for Ben Colebrook in general. And certainly I hope this horse runs well. Just from a standpoint, I always hope horses run well. But I just have a hard time seeing this horse putting together a winning trip. I don't see a lot of pace in front of him. I think the horses that he is going to be chasing are just a better caliber of horse. I think, he was aided by those really fast fractions in the Kentucky Derby and being able to pass a lot of horses late who were quite fatigued. And I think he's a middle of the pack type of horse, which maybe you go, well, Matthew, that means he maybe finishes fifth and with a little bit he gets into the super or something like that. Maybe. I don't see it. I just don't see him being a major win threat here. I don't see him being a major threat to hit the board. He's going to be a high price. There are some other horses at a bigger price that I actually like a little bit more. I do like Archangelo a little bit more. He might be a little bit of a shorter price than Reys Kane, but he should be a higher price than a lot of your favorites. And then even a horse like Tappet Shoes, I think maybe has some more intrigue than a horse like Reys Kane. So I see him on the outside looking in from a lot of my wagers. But hey, the beauty of horse racing is on any given day, any horse has a shot. So let me know in the comments below, are you going to be using Reys Kane in your bets? And make sure to like this video and subscribe to everything that we are doing here on Trust the Profits. Well, folks, until next time, remember, my name is Matthew DeSantis, and you can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. I'm wishing you a great and profitable day at the track and reminding you that it's now post time.